My name is Gaurav Bakshi, and I welcome you to the sixth edition of Strat-Chat, which is our endeavor to bring you up close and personal with HR leaders. And today we have none other than Dr. Sanjeev Dixit, who's a veteran, a global HR leader, a coveted author, a poet, someone I've worked with in the past, and someone I can say who has this great ability to look beyond the ordinary and read the unnoticeable vibes in the organization. And what a great a moment, Sanjeev. Welcome to this initiative. And today, we want to talk to you a little about Plan C. Your most exciting book, and help our viewers also understand this whole culture context and little bit decode it and see how they can really bring it to life. So, welcome, Sanjeev.
So thank you so much, Gaurav. Thanks for having me, and thanks to Strat-Board for inviting me for this very informal and enriching kind of interaction. And glad to connect with you again after long hiatus. I still remember very nostalgically our entire endeavor of integration of Tropicana with the PepsiCo beverage, and used to interact from head office, and I was managing at that time the southern market region for PepsiCo beverage, and it was meaningful and very, I will say, worth remembering kind of interface, and good to connect with you, and you're doing well through your intervention and initiative of Strat-Board, and I think it's becoming a kind of a thought leader and kind of a thinking platform for a lot of professionals across HR and other functions. So kudos to you.
Thank you so much, Sanjeev. I really fondly remember all the times that you mentioned, and as you were speaking, I sort of went back to a few of those moments, but maybe we'll keep that for a side conversation between the two of us. For now, let's get started. Let me ask the most obvious question to begin with, right? I mean, culture is something that everybody talks about, but very few can really define the way it has to be defined or put it in the right lens. But if I were to ask you, Sanjeev, in today's day and light, especially that we've gone through so much in the context of the current times, and culture as a word has a legacy of its own, and so many interpretations, misinterpretations, so on and so forth. But how do you really define culture, and more specifically, if you were to look at it from the lens of today?
So I think the COVID pandemic, in a real sense, has given a reality check to the entire world of business, world of leadership, world of organization who are kind of struggled significantly in terms of surviving this real VUCA. I think in a real sense, COVID gave a test of a VUCA to all the, I was saying, theories and management principles. And to great extent, I will say, culture suddenly got a significant importance, this word and term. And even if you do a Google search, I think one of the most searched word in Google today is this term called culture. Why it has become so relevant in today's context is because of the kind of struggle organization had in terms of surviving this pandemic and very unprecedented situation. A lot of organization gone into knee-jerk. Culture to me is a very simple way. I will say the ecosystem being created by the most influential people in any entity, whether it is a nation, country, society, organization, startup, any entity, the behavior demonstrated by the most influential people set the culture or the tone of the environment or the ecosystem where that organization work or delivers. So, and who are the most influential people? If you talk from a nation context, these are nation leaders. If you talk from a family context, it is father and mother. If you talk in the context of an organization, it is basically the CEO and the CXOs. And that is
Right.
where the entire, as I said, culture comes into practice.
Interesting. But I really like this whole word that you're using. You're talking about influential people. And while, categorically, you also put across some key titles on the table when it comes to influence, but I'm sure uh, influencers are also across the organization, and you include them in, this whole context of culture shaping when you talk about uh, influencers per se, right?
Absolutely, but I think the most important influencer in any entity, as I said, is the head,
Correct.
right? And most of the time, it has been seen the moment head change, the way of working of that entity change. Why?
Correct.
The reason is the kind of influence he brings in to the way of working of that entity.
No,
Take
absolutely.
an example. Just a very topical example is U.S. under Trump and U.S. under Biden. What happened to the same nation? People are the same, everything is same. Only the leader changed. And what
Correct.
happened suddenly? The vibes, the way of entire managing of the country, the governance, suddenly shifted in 2 weeks.
Correct. The whole thinking, the
Suddenly,
paradigm
time.
change.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
then this entire myth, the culture takes many years to get institutionalized, many years to get transformed. It's all myth. And
Wow.
I'm busting that myth right away. It
Brilliant.
changes with the personality of the leader. The leader
Hmm.
change, the influencer change, the way of role modeling of values change, and suddenly you see a different way of working. Take an example of Microsoft. Uh, Under Satya Nadella and before Satya Nadella, Steve Ballmer, same organization, same product, same people, same talent, same infrastructure, same capital. But today, if you see the value of Microsoft under Satya Nadella, it's huge. Why? Because he brought a culture of collaboration. He brought a culture of openness. And if you have read his book, Hit Refresh, he basically point about the entire change he brought in the way the silos were broken among various products, pipelines or verticals, and he brought everybody under the same what you call roof to collaborate, deliberate, innovate, and you created a new organization suddenly.
Absolutely. But tell me, I'm getting more and more curious, Sanjeev, and you had a stellar journey spanning decades, and I'm sure this plan C didn't happen overnight, and it was possibly a culmination of realizations over all these years that were sort of somewhere deep inside, creating uh, clear marks in your mind somewhere. Tell us a little more about what led to Plan C.
So, as you know, Gaurav, anything which is culminated is outcome of many years of I will say incubation and germination. And I believe this rooted from I think my childhood. I'm not talking very kind of a poetic thing, but yeah, because of my environment, my father was in army, Indian Army, and because of the environment at home, which was very deep rooted into uh, value systems of discipline, punctuality, commitment, uh, honesty, integrity. I think these are the values I inherited and imbibed from my parents. So they set the culture at home, which was fully driven by these what you call values-oriented behaviors. And I could see in my parents in terms of the way they used to role model these values of integrity, commitment, punctuality, discipline. And I think that's where it got so deep rooted in me that I believed, and I still believe, that if you kind of driven by these what you call deep rooted values in terms of bringing some kind of a positive impact and change to your team, to your organization, or wherever you're working, I think it is long term and it is institutionalized. And in my 24 years of career journey in corporate, and I've worked across various type of organization, multinational, transnational, promoter-driven, across various geography in Jakarta, in Dubai, in the international business, I realized one very critical thing that while we are driving business for achieving profitability, we are driving business for achieving revenue growth, we are driving business to enhance the, as I said, value of the entity, but the value is enhanced by the values of the organization. It's very, very important, and there's a significant linkage.
Very
And
beautifully.
values enhances value. But what happens is in a very short-termish approach of the CXOs and CEOs, we generally, I think, keep this as a, one of the good to have and nice to have thing. And most of the time, our focus is how to create quarterly growth, how to go about winning the markets, how to go about changing your entire as a go-to-market approach, product folio, depth, breadth of the entire reach. So we get into the semantics of those, as I said, typical conventional approach of growing the business. And this is I've found across. And there are few organizations and few leaders I met in my journey where I saw that they gave a lot of emphasis on these, I think the idea of creating an ecosystem by role modeling these values, which inspire passion among the team members, which inspire commitment among the team members, which inspire resilience among the team members, which inspire agility among the team members. And I've seen the discretionary performance of the team significantly improve, exponentially improve, if I have to say it that way. I think that is, I will say, more sustainable approach towards creating an institution of an organization. Right? Because organization is only generally lived till the CEO is there or the promoter is there. Once he moves on, again go into a kind of a, I will say, self-discovery, because once the leader is lost, you start getting confused how to now work ahead, because nothing is institutionalized. Nothing has been carried forward.
No, fair point. Very, very well put. I like the whole ecosystem approach and how you're sort of relating so many other things around characterizing the ecosystem really. One thing, I really got intrigued with, I mean, since the beginning, we've known business, we've talked about top line, we've talked about bottom line, and I think everybody understands those terms fairly well. You've come up with something called the middle line now. Tell us more, I mean, and quite an intriguing concept, I must say.
So while this entire self-discovery journey of my working in the corporate and working very closely with the senior leadership team, I've always been emphasizing on how we can integrate the core values of the team or the organization with the business deliverables. Always, all the organization, I've always been very, very vocal and I would say very, very, I will say, focused in terms of sensitizing the leadership team to integrate values as part of the business strategy or the business agenda. And that is where I realized that while all the business leaders, all the, I will say, promoters of or leaders of any entity has been driven by this bottom line and top line approach, and which is very conventional and which is a very, very, I will say, basic thing to have to kind of make the business run. What they missed out is the sustainability part. I think this approach of top line and bottom line can take you to the next year, can take you to the next 3 years, can also take you to the next 5 years, and in some cases take you to the next decade as well. But whether it will be sustainable, whether it will be consistent, whether it will be, as I said, institutionalized, there is no guarantee around it. But when you bring in middle line, which is nothing but your core belief, which is nothing but your core values, which is nothing but the kind of, as I said, role modeling of these values-oriented behavior by the senior management team, which I mentioned in the beginning, set the culture of the organization. That is your middle line. In a metaphorical term, Gaurav, if body is your organization and your brain or your head is your top line and your body is your bottom line, if your body has to work efficiently, diligently, effectively, your heart and your soul has to be very healthy and strong, which is your middle line. So heart comes in your middle, right? Now, if your heart is not healthy, your soul is not healthy, I can tell you with a lot of confidence, even if you have got a super IQ brain and a very efficient body, it will collapse. Now, that is where, when I was doing this introspection and reflection, in order to sustain your bottom line and top line, and I think in various research which I did while writing this book, and I traveled various countries and was part of various global forums where I interacted with CXOs and CEOs. Everybody was very concerned about how in this COVID time and pandemic time we can have a business continuity, how we can continue to have a healthy top line and bottom line. They did talk about something called middle line, because it was never part of their, as I said, upbringing. It's not part of the Ivy League syllabus, business schools. We have been always taught about the bestest of model to create bottom line and top line. There is no model around culture. And that is what I try to bring in Plan C, that focus on middle line, your top line and bottom line is sustainable for sure.
So you've sort of unlocked the solution finally. Huh? I mean, I
Yes.
think you brilliantly put. I mean, something has to connect the dots, and I think this is where the answer really lies, right? I mean, uh, and you're right. I mean, a lot of times culture, while being considered important, uh, gets talked about in isolation, and I think that's where this entire piece of really embedding it in the, in the threadbare of the organization, and brilliant. I think quite.
Absolutely. It's not part of the focus primarily. If I have to put it in a very
Yeah.
simple way, it's not part of your focus. Whatever you focus, expand. So you
Hmm.
focus on top line, it expand. You focus on bottom line, it will expand. You will not focus on middle line, it will never expand. It will never be visible even. And that is the psychology of brain. So I used to do this exercise very interestingly. And we can do a 30-second or 10-second exercise that in the room where you're sitting, just look around and see all the object of color brown. I'm just asking you to do this exercise, Gaurav.
Sure.
In 10
Sure.
seconds, just look
Yeah.
around and just look at all the objects of color brown.
Right.
You've seen?
Yeah.
Close your eyes.
Hmm.
Now tell me all the objects of color yellow.
I get
It's
what you're
difficult.
coming from.
It's
Absolutely.
difficult. So that
Absolutely.
is
Yeah.
what the power of brain, that when we are being taught and conditioned to always focus on the brown, which is your top line and bottom line, the moment a pandemic kind of COVID kind of pandemic comes, when your eyes are closed, you're blinded by the pandemic, and you have to find a solution in the form of yellow, you're not able to find that yellow. That's how
Brilliant.
brain works.
Fantastic. I'm getting a little more eager, Sanjeev. So, it's quite an interesting conversation.
Most
You
welcome.
made a very startling remark. We've talked about, we've heard from Peter Drucker talking about culture eats strategy for breakfast, and then we had Kurt Kaufman who talked about culture eating strategy for lunch, and you're saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the meals are served by none other than the CEO. Now, what
Absolutely.
makes you say this?
So I think I quoted few examples during our conversation about US under Trump and US under Biden,
Right.
Microsoft under Steve Ballmer, Microsoft under Satya Nadella, and there could be a hundred of examples we can talk about. And the summary is that the head of the any entity, as I mentioned, it creates the or influences the way of working or the ecosystem that will be there in the entity. So while you can have a greatest of strategy, you can engage Bain and Company, you can engage BCG, you can engage McKinsey, you can engage all the top 4 strategy champions in the world, give them top dollar consultancy, excellent strategy you have. And then you execute with the bestest of your talent from Ivy League colleges. Now, the point I'm asking them is, can they, with a lot of confidence in what you call conviction, tell me that with that kind of a greatest strategy and the greatest execution, they can give me a sustainable result for next 3 years? No, nobody. Why? Because they have not looked around and thought about what will make the strategy and execution tick. What is that invisible, intangible thing which is getting missed in the entire scheme of thing? And that is what I call the ecosystem created by these guys who were part of this strategy formulation and the execution. What kind of behavior they are role modeling? Is it going to enable the strategy to get executed well, or it becomes some of the barriers, right? So a leader with the greatest of strategy and greatest of execution team has a very, as I said, very authoritative style of leadership. Now, can he create discretionary performance from his team? No, because he's not engaging them in terms of the ideation. He's not engaging. So what I'm saying, the culture he creates eats this strategy from the bestest of the consulting company and even the execution across 3 meals. Across 3 meals. It's not about only breakfast or lunch. It's across 3 meals and daily. It's not about a day. Every day, CEOs serve the strategy on the platter to the culture. And if culture is not healthy, culture eat that strategy absolutely without salt and pepper.
Strong remarks, but very,
that's a reality. People
absolutely.
can have a good reality check.
A lot of people shy in making those remarks, Sanjeev, and I'm glad somebody out there is not only noticing it but really spelling it out there. But one thing, Sanjeev.
No, I've been very vocal. I've been very vocal in the boardrooms, for which I had my own share of what you call discussions and hot discussions. But I always tell my senior management or CEO, for that matter, that you are not a chief executive officer. You are chief excellence officer. You are a culture of excellence in an organization. If I have to put an acronym around CEO, it's a culture of excellence in organization, CEO.
Interesting. You talked about, you mentioned that focusing on the intangible, but at the same time, you talk about ways in which you can create tangible outcomes when it comes to culture, and you talk about setting KPIs around culture. What are a few of your indicative measures or things that you think with which organizations can move ahead and strengthen their culture matrix?
Absolutely. So I think this is one of the interesting insight while I was doing the research on my book, Plan C. A lot of insight came through my doctorate, which I did on the area of impact of role modeling of values on employee engagement and the business performance. This was my thesis. So I statistically proved, taking 2 organizations as an example, empirically, that there is a significant link between the role modeling of the values-oriented behavior by the senior management on the employee engagement, further on the business performance indicator, which is basically your sales revenue, profitability, and market capitalization. So this was also one of the data point. While I also did a lot of research on the Plan A type of organization, Plan B organization, and Plan C organization. Now, Plan A organizations are primarily action-oriented. A stands for action. So they always believe in having a great strategy, great execution. The Plan B are very risk-averse organization, which basically believe in having a contingency plan, preventive plan, predictive plan, risk management strategy, risk mitigation plan, to ensure that if plan B doesn't deliver, plan B comes into place. And that's where the plan C generally get ignored. And various research study and interaction which I had with senior management, I asked them that, okay, you have a culture, you have a vision, you have a mission, you have your balance scorecard, you have a KPIs, you have a KRAs. Tell me how many of those KPIs, KRA, vision have a culture as part of their entire element. So that's where I said, do you have a culture as a part of your vision? Do you have a mission? Do you have the culture KPIs? Do you have a culture reviews? Do you have the culture audits? Now, some of the KPIs which comes up very, very significantly are the kind of investment you have done on the various culture transformational intervention and the kind of ROI you can get. So return on investment basis the culture improvement. Even in terms of the, say for example, top line improvement. How those top line have been improved by implementing some of the specific behavior associated with your values. How you've created consequences and rewarded or given a differential reward for people who've been achieving those top line and bottom line through these culture, as I said, behavioral indicators. So you can convert these cultural element into values, further into behaviors. Behaviors can be measured, behavior can be observed, behavior can be mapped as well, right? So you can map in terms of its impact on the top line, you can map in terms of its bottom line, you can calculate the ROI. There are now various tools, AI tools, by which you can do a lot of modeling around how by the specific, what you call values-oriented behavior, what kind of value you can create. And then you can start reviewing them as part of your business reviews on a quarterly basis. That how you're doing on those culture KPIs. You can have culture audit scores as one of the indicators, as I said, right? As a very, very empirical data.
When you have this sort of approach ready, you can even intermesh it in the various stages of the employee life cycle, right from the time a person is coming in to
absolutely
into assessment to career development to so much more.
From hiring to exit, culture could become part of your entire decision-making process. It become part of your entire strategy formulation as well.
Right.
That if you have to grow, say 3x or 5x in next 3 to 5 years or 10x, for example, what are some of the key pillars of or key drivers of that growth, and what are those culture elements which can contribute to that growth? What are some of the impediment from in our current culture through audit, and there are various tools which I also mentioned in Plan C. There is a culture survey you can do a culture audit, and then you can find out whether there is a relevance of some of these specific behaviors being perceived by the employees as impediments in the way you people are growing or executing your strategy.
Bang on.
You can apply the PDCA. So I generally say simply apply the culture review as part of your PDCA. Plan, do, check, and act. So part of your plan, culture, then when you're doing the execution, culture reviews, then you're checking whether the whatever action you have taken is in line with your expectation. If there's a gap, how you can align those, and then again you do the as I said, action on that. So PDCA approach.
Like any other priority which is big, like having a PDCA for top line, like having for any other business plan that you're making, use the same approach for culture and ensure that you're not only just thinking about it once in a while, but you have clear, definitive way forward.
Dashboard. Yeah, you need to have a dashboard to review and make it a part of your, as I said, top 3 agenda in your quarterly reviews, in your monthly reviews. And call it a very bluntly the culture review. You're doing a culture review. You're not doing business review. And if your culture is improving, rest assured your business is in the right path.
Fantastic. Great, Sanjeev. It's been quite a phenomenal conversation, I must say. And however, one important question, really. I mean, you've been to so many countries, you've interacted with so many HR folks, CEOs, so on and so forth, and you still see that, as COVID sort of subsides, things are beginning to open up. What will be your one big message to organizations who now want to bounce back from the lens of culture? I mean, especially when you're talking about remote teams, this, that, and so many other hookah complexities around us. What's your one big message to all the business and HR leaders out there?
So I will say have a plan C for sure. So I think that's missing in the entire scheme of thing.
Right.
But I think in going forward, the model is going to be hybrid. I
Hmm.
think the virtual and the real world will, I think, coexist together because this entire COVID has changed some of the things permanently,
Right.
which is being productive, working from home, which was a myth before this COVID. People used to
Hmm.
see the work from home approach as some kind of a very, very philanthropic and HR driven agenda. But now, once
Correct.
COVID happened, uh, the lot of organization which has got a very strong focus on a trust among their employees, strong focus on having a high amount of empowerment, a high amount of, as I said, openness. Those organizations have delivered significantly and productively during COVID time because they were earlier also working as if a work from home because
Right.
they had a high trust of people. They don't believe that if they're working from home, they're sleeping and just they're logging in and then.
That's so right.
So,
If they did not have the trust in their culture, they wouldn't
yeah. So,
been able.
so I'm giving you an example of this very middle line, which is called trust. Now,
Correct.
trust cannot be created by any strategy. Trust cannot be created by any execution plan. There is no strategy
Correct.
around trust. If somebody can tell me I have a great strategy how to build trust, I will have a good debate with that gentleman, even from Boston or
Right.
any top four company. So my one piece of input is that have a culture as part of your leadership game plan. Make culture as your top three priorities. Make culture as not a good to have and a nice to have chat as an offline discussion, but make it a part of your core review. Make it a part of your core, as I said, measurement
Right.
and whatever you measure improves. So if you're focusing on culture as part of your measurement, it will improve.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
an HR guy can become your, as I said, one of the internal consultant. Your other CXOs can become the stakeholder in the entire delivering of those deliverables in their respective verticals.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it should become one of the most high weightage KRAs for all these top leaders. High weightage KRAs. So your variable plan is in
Very,
terms of how you
very
achieve.
that everybody who's tuned in to listen to this conversation really doesn't wait any longer, and gets onto this path of fructifying the whole plan C for their organization. Sanjeev, it's been really phenomenal having you. And if
Pleasure.
there is, in your own way, I know you're an established poet as well. So in case you want to sign off in your own signature style, I'll be happy to hear any one or two quick lines which sort of have the same sentiment. If there's anything coming up your mind.
Uh, I can quote from the one of my book, which is just getting published from Bharati Gyanpith, the title poem called Udna Janta Hu.
Right. If I can just have a couple of lines from that, it'll be awesome.
पंख टूटे हैं पर मैं उड़ना जानता हूँ, लफ्ज छूटे हैं पर मायना जानता हूँ, अंधेरा हर तरफ घिरा है कोयले सा, तश्नगी से उसे जलाना जानता हूँ, और जिंदगी वैसे तो होती है ना तमाम, जिद से सही पूरी करना जानता हूँ, और उछाला शिद्दत से है पत्थर हवा में, मैं आसमां में छेद करना जानता हूँ। और मेरी सरगम में वैसे तो हैं सुर अधूरे, पर नज्म सुरीली बनाना जानता हूँ। और पानी से जुड़ा है हर बर्फ का मुकद्दर, पानी से पानी बन जाना जानता हूँ।
क्या बात।
और पंख टूटे हैं पर मैं उड़ना जानता हूँ, लफ्ज छूटे हैं पर मायना जानता हूँ।
बहुत खूब, बहुत खूब.
Thank
What a
you.
brilliant, and I think that so holds so true for people, for I mean for individuals, for organizations, for countries. I mean, I think the dream to
Poem of
fly.
hope is a
Yeah,
poem of hope. Yeah.
absolutely. So great. Thank you, Sanjeev, so much for being with us here today, and I hope our listeners enjoyed this conversation as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gaurav, for having me. And I think it was very free-flowing and heartfelt kind of a chat. The time just fly, or flew rather. We didn't know that we spent more than an hour, and it was meaningful, very productive, and fruitful discussion. So look forward to see more of such conversation with you in future.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Gaurav. All the best.